Good evening. I'm Dr. Steve Hotze, President of Conservative Republicans of Texas. Thank you for joining this very historic Tele-Town hall meeting to defend the Texas Marriage Amendment and maintain biblical marriage in Texas. We have thousands of like-minded Texans joining us on the line tonight. Fellow Christian conservatives, we're in the midst of a battle over the soul of America, more particularly over the soul of Texas. President Obama and his army of liberal soldiers have formed Battleground Texas to turn Texas into a liberal, socialist, pro-homosexual, anti-Christian state like California. The liberals and their pro-homosexual allies want to force Texans to accept homosexual marriage and the practice of sodomy as normal and morally right. However, it seems that they've forgotten their history. Texans don't back down from a fight. We don't surrender. Remember the Alamo is our cry. Hello, I'm Dr. Steve Hotze, President of Conservative Republicans of Texas. Like Colonel Travis, commander of the Alamo, I'm drawing a line in the sand and asking you to join with me to fight those who want to destroy the moral fabric of our state and nation by forcing us to accept same-sex marriage, homosexuality, and lesbianism as normal. Step over the line tonight and become a defender of Texas, and I'm going to tell you how you can do it. It's time for Christians to stand up from the pews and go to the polls and elect candidates who support the Texas Marriage Amendment, who support biblical marriage between one man and one woman. Now, if you want your voice to be heard, then all you need to do right now is simply press 7 on your phone. You will automatically be connected to a person who will show you how to complete and sign the defense of the Texas Marriage Amendment petition online. Again, to sign this defense of the Texas Marriage Petition, press 7 on your phone now, and then you can rejoin us. Press 7 right now. Our goal is to have 100,000 Texans sign this Texas Marriage Amendment petition and send a message to the politicians and to the judges that Texans are ready and willing to fight for biblical marriage. Now, I'm Dr. Steve Hotze, President of Conservative Republicans of Texas. The liberals and their homosexual allies are well-funded and extremely motivated. They hate everything that you and I and every God-fearing Texan and American believes in. We can't let them win this battle for marriage. We can't win this battle for our families in Texas if they're so well-financed. But guess what? The liberals won the battle over prayer in schools. They won the battle over abortion. I say enough's enough. Texas is the last stand for Christian values and conservatism in America. This is the time we will defeat the pro-homosexual liberals, and we're going to prevent them from destroying our families. Press 7 on your telephone and make a generous investment in our efforts. Every single dollar will count. We need to build our own war chest. Will you commit to help us fight this battle for biblical marriage by giving tonight? Press 7 right now to invest in our efforts to protect our families. This is a critical town hall meeting, and I welcome each one of you here tonight. I'm Dr. Steve Hotze, President of Conservative Republicans of Texas, and I urge you to stay on the call for its entirety. During this meeting, you will get to hear from our special guest, Brian Kamenker, President of Mass Resistance from Massachusetts, who wrote the book, What Same-Sex Marriage Has Done for Massachusetts, and you will be shocked what it's done. And we don't want it to happen in Texas. You'll also hear from Houston Attorney Jared Woodfield, Christian conservative leader and former 12-year chairman of the Harris County Republican Party in Houston, on what happened in Texas when a federal judge in San Antonio ruled that the Texas Constitution Marriage Amendment was unconstitutional, and how the propaganda war machine of the homosexuals is promoting its agenda. You'll understand that this battle for biblical marriage isn't over. Texas is in the fight now, folks, and as the liberal media would have you believe, they're going to win, but I say they haven't heard our cry. Remember the Alamo. This is Dr. Steve Hotze, President of Conservative Republicans of Texas. Now, let me tell you what's happening. Obama's battleground for Texas is working overtime to defeat conservative Republicans in the upcoming November elections and to turn Texas into a pro-homosexual, liberal, blue state like California or New York. The defense of the Texas Marriage Amendment petition provides us with a tremendous opportunity to organize Christian conservatives across the state to defend Texas against the assault of the left. Now, if you want your voice to be heard, what I want to encourage you to do right away is to press 7 on your line and you will be automatically connected to a person online who'll show you how you can sign the Defense of Texas Marriage Amendment online. By doing this, by pressing 7 and signing the amendment, you will send messages to politicians in our state capital in Austin, and to the judges in the state, both state and federal judges, that Texas has said enough is enough. Christians are rising up. We're not going to let 3% of the population who promote sodomy and homosexual behavior and want it to be accepted, we're not going to let them run our state. Christians are going to stand up. It's about time our Christians and our pastors said enough is enough. And if you want your voice to be heard, then I want you to press 7 to vote to vote and to sign the petition. I'm also asking you to press 7 and make a commitment to make an investment in our campaign so that we will be able to fight the radical homosexual movement. Texas is the last stand for conservative and biblical values in America. And I believe with God's help and through our diligent efforts working together, we can turn the tide of godless secularism and socialism that threatens to engulf our state. As president, I'm Dr. Steve Hotze, and as president of Conservative Republicans of Texas, I have committed all our resources to electing conservative Republicans who support biblical values and the Texas Marriage Amendment. I'm committed to helping them defeat Battleground Texas. Conservative Republicans is organizing a counterattack against Battleground Texas. We've developed a battle plan, and I want to share that with you. Allow me to share this strategy and plan. We have initiated a Defense of Texas Marriage Amendment petition drive through the Conservative Republicans of Texas. It will be known in the churches as Campaign for Texas Families when you have your petitions. We're going to organize conservative churches statewide and mobilize Christians to get out of the pews and get up and vote in the November general elections at record numbers. Christians will be motivated, I'm convinced, by a passion to defend the Texas Constitution Marriage Amendment and to protect their families and children from the satanic movement that's promoting the perversion of homosexual marriages and the public acceptance and approval of homosexual behavior. Our special guest, Brian Kamaker, is president of Mass Resistance, and he's from Massachusetts. He wrote the book, What Same-Sex Marriage is Done in Massachusetts, and he'll explain to you what's happened in Massachusetts, and you'll be shocked. We must rise up and unite now and deliver a surprise attack to the liberals' political machine, Battleground Texas, this fall, and I need your help. I'm Dr. Hotze, president of Conservative Republicans of Texas, and we're the largest political PAC, Republican PAC in the state that's openly Christian and socially conservative, as well as fiscally conservative. I believe it's time right now for Christian conservatives in this state to take a stand. Remember, Texas is the last stand for biblical and conservative values. Remember the Alamo? That is where Colonel Travis in Texas took their stand. And look at the difference it made. Texas is a free nation because of their willingness to stand. It is time for Bible-believing Christians in Texas to unite to defeat godless, secularist, pro-homosexual, liberal enemy. Now, what can you do? Well, the first thing you can do immediately is punch 7. Punch 7 on your phone, and you're going to be able to sign the Defense of Texas Marriage Amendment online. We need 1,000. I'd like to get 200,000 or 250,000 Christians signing the petition. This will give us an army. You will give us your name and address. We'll be able to contact you. We will be able to elect our guys to office in November, and then in the legislature we'll be able to pass legislation that would nullify any act by the federal government or a federal judge that said same-sex marriage has to be accepted in Texas. We're going to tell them, no, come and take it. We're not going to let it happen in Texas. The second thing you can do is you can make an investment in our valiant effort to fight the liberal Obama Battleground Texas, and that's what I ask you to do. You know, they want to battle over abortion. They want prayer in the schools. We said this was going to happen, and I say enough's enough. It's time for you and I as Christians to take a stand, press 7, and make a generous investment in our effort. Now, wow, I'm telling you what, I'm getting wound up here, folks, and I'm excited about this. I'm Dr. Steve Hotze, president of Conservative Republicans of Texas. I also have a medical practice in Houston, Hotze Health and Wellness Center. I've authored 2 medical books, Hormones, Health, and Happiness, and Hypothyroidism, Health, and Happiness. Been on hundreds of TV shows, including Fox programs, Neil Cavuto, Fox and Friends, and Varney. As you can probably tell, I'm passionate about Texas and constitutional liberty and freedom. Tonight, I've invited you as conservative Texans to come together for one reason, to defend the Texas Marriage Amendment. We must defend our families from the pro-homosexual liberals, and who are hell-bent. These guys are hell-bent on forcing us to accept and approve of their homosexual lifestyles in our communities, in our homes, public schools, workplaces, and churches. Gay, homosexual, lesbian, transgender, transvestite. The left is trying to force normalization of homosexual activity and other deviant and perverted sexual activities. We're battling same-sex marriage this year. What will it be in the upcoming years? Polygamy, incest, bestiality, pedophilia? You know what? It says in the Bible, the wicked strut about on every side when violence is exalted among the sons of men, and that's what's happening. The news media, the TV, they're exalting this violence, and the wicked are strutting about. That's why the homosexuals and the perverts are strutting about with their hands under their armpits and strutting about like they're in charge of everything. I say enough's enough. In just the last few years, I've watched the liberals give special rights to those who practice sodomy and lesbianism, and to those who claim to be women, those men who claim to be women. They call themselves transgender. Do you know what we used to call them in the old days? Most people called them perverts and deviants. Every time I pick up a newspaper, I say, how in the world did this happen so quickly? And you know what I think? I think Christians, we've been asleep at the wheel, and pastors have lacked the courage to stand up against this rampant evil that is unleashed upon our society. The homosexual political movement is demonic and desperately evil, and it must be fought using the sword of the Word of God. If you want to know what God thinks about homosexuality and lesbianism, read Romans 1:18 through 32. And what are the results of a society that embraces homosexuality? Just look at Sodom and Gomorrah. The pro-homosexual liberals won't stop until each and every one of us is forced to accept the promotion and practice of sodomy in our schools, in our churches, in our homes. If we oppose homosexuality, then we will face the threat of arrest for hate crimes. Some people call this intimidation, the threat of criminal or civil penalties against those who oppose the homosexual agenda. It's really homofascism. My friends, Obama's battleground Texas is working to make Texas one of the largest, most conservative states to make same-sex marriage legal. This is not going. I'm here to tell you. I'm Dr. Hotze. I'm president of Conservative Republicans of Texas, and by golly, this is not going to happen in Texas, not on my watch. I believe you are just as strongly committed to this battle and cultural war as I am. The Texan Constitution says marriage is between a man and a woman. That's biblical marriage. Marriage is a God-ordained institution between one man and one woman, and a fundamental foundation of the families and ordered societies. For this cause, it says, a man shall leave his father and his mother and shall cleave to his wife, and shall become one flesh. That's Genesis 2:24. So we need to muster an army of committed Christians like yourself who are ready to defend biblical values and support the foundations of this great nation. Now, if you want your voice to be heard, then you simply have to press 7 on the phone now. It'll automatically connect you to a person who will help you fill out a petition on the defense of the Texas Marriage Amendment. And then, once you press 7, you're on the phone now. You can rejoin after that's done. And I'm also encouraging you, when you press 7, make an investment in this effort. We're going to reach, this is our second teleconference of 8 teleconferences. We'll be on 5 with Christian voters statewide. We had 15,800 on 2 nights ago. I don't know how many thousand we have on tonight, but we're going to be talking to the pastors. We have 3 pastors' conferences. The first pastor conference is going to be led by Dr. Edwin Young of Second Baptist in Houston. So we've got strong leaders that are willing to take a stand and saying, enough is enough in Texas. We're not going to let the homosexuals have same-sex marriage, and we're not going to let it be taught in our schools. We're just not going to let it happen. Now, look, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, press 0 on your phone right now, and you'll be connected to a communicator who'll take your question and he'll feed it to me. Now, tonight I have with me an expert guest who works tirelessly to defend biblical marriage and conservative causes right here in Texas. It's Jared Woodfield. He's the immediate past chairman of the Harris County Republican Party, where he served for 12 years. He's a practicing attorney in Houston and a major leader in the conservative movement, and has 2 lawsuits against the lesbian mayor, the Houston mayor, Anise Parker. Jared, what legally occurred to get us into this predicament over the homosexual marriage in Texas?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me on, Dr. Hotze. It's just so important that folks sign this petition to defend the Texas Marriage Amendment because we know that marriage is under attack. I mean, we go back to 2005 when 76% of all Texans overwhelmingly said in the form of a constitutional amendment that marriage is a relationship between one man and one woman. Now, it wasn't even close. 76%. But the left, when they don't like what's happening at the ballot box, what do? They try to go to the courthouse. They try to change what the people have already done. And that's what they've done in Texas, and that's what they're attempting to do all around this country. We know all about the decision that we've heard recently from an Orlando Garcia, a San Antonio District Court judge, who simply held that the will of the people is insignificant. He tried to hold the Texas Marriage Amendment to be unconstitutional. We know what our local mayor has done in Houston when she unilaterally said she's going to recognize same-sex marriages from other jurisdictions in violation of the Texas Marriage Amendment and the Texas Defense of Marriage Act and the city charter. I mean, there is a real active movement right now in our courts and amongst some of our politicians to overturn what the voters did very clearly and very succinctly in 2005. And so we must sign this petition and let our voices be heard. That there is huge strength in numbers. I can tell you that right now, that if we have 100, 200, 300,000 plus folks sign the petition to defend the marriage amendment, we will be successful, and it will speak volumes to the politicians and ultimately to the courts. And that's why it's so important that everybody, whatever you may be doing, in my case, I'm a lawyer. What can I do? Well, we decided that we were going to take this mayor on in court when she decided to ignore the voters, and we've been successful. We've restrained her from moving forward with this unlawful, unconstitutional ordinance that she's tried to pass, and we're going to continue to fight them every step of the way. So thank you, Dr. Hotze, for your stand. We're going to continue to fight here in the courts, but please, folks, if you're listening tonight, press 7 and sign that petition to defend the Texas Marriage Amendment.
Well, that's so key. Please, you heard what Jared said. This unelected liberal judge in San Antonio overruled what 76% of Texans said when we passed the constitutional amendment saying marriage in the state of Texas is between one man and one woman, and in one stroke of a pen. You know, that's 12 or 16 words, and it took him 48 pages to try to explain why that was wrong, and that's just crazy. By the way, let me ask you this, and I'm sure our listeners have a hard time understanding how a judge like Orlando Garcia in San Antonio, a federal judge, could overturn the Texas Constitution voted on by Texas citizens. How can the courts so obviously ignore the wishes of the people of the state of Texas? What about the 10th Amendment and states' rights? I thought marriage was a state issue.
2 words, judicial activism. There are liberal trial court judges, and this is what that person is. Judge Garcia is a liberal, democratically appointed federal district court judge. But folks need to remember that this is just one judge. His opinion will be appealed to a higher court, to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the left right now is trying to really push a myth on us. In the latter part of 2013, there was a decision from the Supreme Court, U.S. versus Windsor, dealing with the Federal Defense of Marriage Act. And all that really said was that states, and not the federal government, are allowed to decide what the definition of marriage looks like in their particular areas, their particular states. So when people go out there and they try to convince you that the Supreme Court has said that state marriage amendments are unconstitutional, that's just an absolute falsification and fabrication. And that's why it's so important, again, that you sign this petition so our voices are heard loud and clearly, because marriage, according to the Supreme Court, is the province of the states. Texans have spoken to it clearly, and we need to speak to it one more time by pressing 7, signing the petition to defend the marriage amendment, and letting our voices be heard loudly, clearly, and strongly.
Listen, Jared, I want to thank you for your strong stand. God bless you for what you're doing. Now, folks, marriage in Texas is still between a man and a woman. What the judge did in San Antonio has been stayed. Lieutenant Governor Abbott and Governor Perry, Attorney General Abbott and Governor Perry have appealed this to the Fifth Court of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in the federal court, Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans. And that's a conservative court. This will be overturned by that court. And by the way, a federal judge in Louisiana just 2 days ago ruled that the Louisiana Amendment saying marriages between a man and a woman is constitutional. So we're going to get this overturned, but we have got to sign these petitions because this will add strength to the, I like to say this, put starch in the judges' robes up there in the Fifth Circuit Court and in our politicians so that they will stand for biblical values and biblical marriage and won't be swayed by the press, which is going to be pushing them to open up and everything's okay, I'm okay, and homosexuality is fine. They're going to have all that coming down, all that crap coming down from the media and the press, and they've got to have strong enough intestinal fortitude that they're going to say, no, enough's enough, just like you're going to say now. I've been fighting this battle a long time. I fought it in Austin in 1980 and 81. And I fought it in Houston in 1985 and 86. I led the campaign for Houston. We defeated the homosexual rights referendum 83 to 17%. I was thinking we'd never have to mess with this again, but it's risen up its ugly head, and we're fighting it again. Who would have ever dreamed that they would come up with this concoction that 2 men or 2 women could get married? That is such a perversion of God's order and nature's order. That is just wrong. And if you want to find out what's going to happen to a society that condones that, go to the Dead Sea and take a look at Sodom and Gomorrah, for crying out loud. That's the end result. It's destruction. Yeah, judgment comes down. God will bring judgment down on the nation that tolerates and accepts homosexual behavior. It's one thing to be sinners. Folks, we're all sinners, saved by grace, right? But we don't go out and promote our sin as something normal, acceptable, which should be taught to children in schools and should be exalted and paraded. These people don't admit what they're doing is wrong, and that's what's wrong. It's a demonic situation. These people are, it's satanic. It's a perversion of God's order. And look, if you want to stop this in Texas, then you go right now and press 7. And sign the petition, Defense of the Texas Marriage Amendment. Sign that petition, and then make a contribution. Make an investment in this campaign. This is the first or second of 8 teleconferences statewide. Now, I'm proud to introduce our special guest, Brian Kamenker, president of Mass Resistance for Massachusetts, who wrote the book, What Same-Sex Marriage Has Done for Massachusetts. Remember to stay on the call. At the end of the program, you're going to learn how to get a free copy of Brian Kamenker's book, entitled What Same-Sex Marriage Has Done for Massachusetts. Brian, welcome to the program tonight.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be here.
Brian, tell us about the homosexual agenda, would you please?
Well, our group has been watching that in Massachusetts in the public schools and after the gay marriage thing for nearly 20 years. And you can judge what is the homosexual agenda by what they wrote they want to do, what they've already done, and what we've even seen in places like the military. For instance, it includes a forced universal acceptance of the homosexual lifestyle. It includes discrediting of the scriptures that condemn homosexuality, basically a muzzling of the clergy and the Christian media. They've written about overturning the age of consent laws, and that's already started happening in some places.
So that means they want pedophilia to be legalized.
Well, basically.
Let me mention something here, folks. Let me interrupt you, Brian. Listen to me, folks. Homosexuals can't reproduce. How do they get more homosexuals? They've got to recruit them. And where do they recruit them? By teaching it in the school, starting in kindergarten. That's what they've done in Massachusetts. Go on. Tell us what else is on their agenda.
Well, indoctrinating children in the public schools, I mean, that has started in a huge way in Massachusetts, pushing same-sex marriage, basically overturning all laws that reflect traditional morality and replacing them with things like same-sex marriage. Basically, you won't be able to exercise your religious freedom.
Well, listen, this is important. Can you imagine this? In Massachusetts, the homosexual agenda, they wrote out these things. Universal acceptance of homosexuality, discrediting of the scriptures, blasting the Christian clergy, demanding special rights and laws, and they want special privileges for practicing homosexuality. They want to teach sodomy in the schools to little children. They shouldn't be teaching anybody. and they want same-sex marriage, which they got in Massachusetts, and they're trying to get in the other states and in the United States. Now, let me ask you this. If you care about Texas and the future of Texas, if you care about your children and your grandchildren, then this is what I want to encourage you to do. Press 7 right now and sign the Defense of Texas Marriage Amendment. You can sign it online. Somebody will guide you through that. And then I want to ask you to help us advance our cause as we try to get 200,000 people to sign the Defense of Texas Marriage Amendment petition statewide. And we're going to we're doing this to be able to capture your name so we can help you activate and mobilize fellow church members at your church to get out and vote in record numbers so we can send a message to the pro-homosexual liberals and to battleground Texas, all the way to Obama in the White House, who hosted a whole cadre of so-called transgendered people who didn't know what sex they were. We call them perverts and deviants. He honored them in the White House. We need to send a message to him that we want you to go too, and all of your ilk. We don't want you here. We have got to have a big turnout in the election by Christians if we're going to take our nation back. Christians cannot sit on their hands. Now, let me ask you this, Brian. When did they pass the same-sex marriage in Massachusetts?
Well, you know, this is you're talking about the activist courts. In November of 2003, the court, the Supreme Court of Massachusetts, ruled it unconstitutional not to allow same-sex marriage. This is despite the fact that the law in Massachusetts said that marriage should be between a man and a woman, and still says it. But 6 months later, the wedding started, nevertheless.
Okay, so they passed same-sex marriage. Now, folks, this was in 2003. Here it is in 2014 in Texas. It's 11 years. It's a slow creep. It's like cancer spreading slowly across the country, and the liberals are going to liberal federal benches. They go to jurisdictions where they know they have liberal, pro-homosexual, liberal judges, Democratic judges that will side with them. And that's the way they create a public relations, a momentum that, we're winning everywhere, when the vast majority of Americans oppose this and don't want anything to do with it, but they don't know what to do because it comes out on the TV like filth and they think it's all over. In fact, my former pastor, the church where I've quit attending because he wouldn't take a stand, said, I think we've lost the battle. Well, you've lost the battle. Let me tell you what, I don't want to go to a church or play on a football team where the pastor or the coach says we're losing the battle, we've lost the battle, we're not going to do any good. You guys need to find it. You need to put a light under your pastor's feet, and you need to say, Pastor, we need to take a stand at our church for biblical marriage. We need to pass this petition. We need to get our folks registered to vote. We need to turn them out to vote. We need to go and elect godly people office. We need to run godly Christians for office. We need to take back the realms of civil government in our state and take them away from Look, somebody's going to run the government. It's either going to be the Christians and people that have Christian values, or it's going to be battleground Texas and the socialists and the liberals and the pro-homosexual advocates. They're going to run the state. It's your choice, folks. If we want to sit down and fall asleep at the wheel and drive over a cliff and destroy our society for our children and our grandchildren. And by the way, I've got 8 kids and 19 grandkids, and that's why I'm fighting mad over this. I'm fighting for their future, and I want you to join us. And how do you do that? Well, this is how you do it. If you want your voice to be heard, simply press 7 on your phone now and sign the Texas Marriage Petition online. Again, the Defense of Texas Marriage Petition, press 7. And let me just say this. I'm Dr. Steve Hotze, President of Conservative Republicans of Texas. The liberals and their homosexual allies are well-funded and extremely motivated. Enough's enough. Texas is the last stand for Christian values and for conservatism in America. This time we will defeat the pro-homosexual liberals, and we're going to prevent them from destroying our families. So press 7 on your telephone to make a generous investment in our efforts. Every single dollar will count. So press 7 right now. What happened in the schools, Brian, in Massachusetts? Tell us about what they've done, what kind of curriculum has come out in the schools. And listen to this, folks. Listen clearly.
Well, first, I think that people need to understand that a federal judge in federal district court in Boston ruled that because of homosexual marriage, that schools have an obligation a legal obligation to teach homosexual marriage as equal to regular marriage, and that parents do not legally have a right to opt their children out.
Folks, did you hear what he said? In Massachusetts, a federal judge said because same-sex marriage is legal, it has to be taught as equal in the schools as normal, traditional, biblical marriage. Now, is that upside-down thinking or what? That's what can happen here in Texas if you don't take a stand. And the way you take a stand is you press 7. Go to 7 and sign the Defense of Texas Marriage Petition and make an investment in our efforts so we can spread this across the state. And when you sign this petition, you're going to get a copy of a petition that you can circulate in your church. I want you to get fired up about this, folks. Go ahead. What else has happened in the schools, Brian?
Well, I watched as a man, a friend of mine, who did not want his kindergarten-age son be taught about homosexuality. He resisted. He said, "I don't want this, and I want to opt out." They called the police, and they had him taken to jail. I watched that happen. In fact, we have pictures of it. I was in the room when a woman who had a 6th-grade son did not want her son to be taught about gay marriage. And they said, "We are going to do it, and there must be something wrong with you." That's what the school officials said.
Well, hey, now this is key. Listen to what Brian said. They said to the mother, if you can imagine, they said to the mother that she was not thinking right. It was her that wasn't thinking right, because she didn't want to let her son be taught about homosexual behavior. Do you understand how upside down it is? Right becomes wrong and wrong becomes right. The homosexuals literally think their behavior is normative and acceptable and good. They think that people that believe in biblical marriage and traditional family values are perverted. I've read their material. Go online and read their material. They think exactly the opposite of godly biblical values and traditional Christian values and Judeo-Christian values. They're on the other side, folks. They're not nice people. They believe just the opposite. They're not God-fearing people, and they want to turn our culture upside down. They want sexual anarchy, and they want moral anarchy in our country. Okay, tell me, how has this affected businesses there in Massachusetts, Brian?
Well, for instance, insurance companies must recognize same-sex marriage and all kinds of insurance. Businesses in their benefits have to recognize 2 men or 2 women as being, in their either employees or customers, or be fined or taken to court. A friend of mine was fired from his job because he simply had a conversation that he didn't believe in same-sex marriage because it was against the Bible. And he was fired. Of course, the wedding industry must accept same-sex marriage. I have a friend who ran a bed and breakfast, and they were fined $30,000 because they simply didn't want to have a lesbian reception. They were Catholics, and they didn't want to do it. They had to pay $30,000.
Okay, folks. Did you? We've heard these stories around the country when the homosexuals get their minority status or same-sex marriage, then they go and try to impose their values on you. They're homo-fascists. They don't want you to have a voice. They don't want you to think what you think. They don't want you to believe in biblical values. They want to intimidate you and force you through the courts of law, and by fining you civil penalties for standing up for your religious convictions. There's no religious freedom when they take over. They deny everything that the Bible says on sexuality. They pervert it, they turn it upside down, they turn it inside out. And it says in the Bible, in Romans chapter 1, 18 through 32, that God gave them over to a perverted, reprobate mind. You never hear the term perverted anymore, or reprobate, or deviant, do you? Because the liberals say there's nothing deviant, there's nothing reprobate, there's nothing perverted. Only people that think they are. It's only the Christians that stand for God's standards. We're the ones who are perverted. We're the ones who are deviant. Well, we do deviate from the society, no question about it, when it supports that. Now, look, if you want to stop homosexuality in Texas, if you want to stop same-sex marriage, then what you have to do, you've got to go and press 7 on your dial. Press 7 on the phone and sign the Defense of Texas Marriage Amendment. And then, while you're there, I want to tell you what, we need your help. We need your investment. We need your donations to help us advance this all the way through the elections and then into the legislature when the legislature comes into session in January, because we need to pass laws that will build barriers to prevent the homosexuals from invading our schools, from invading our churches, from invading our businesses, from invading our political structure. What's happened in politics there? Tell me how politicians have responded to this.
Well,
Brian?
if you think that it's bad with the mayor of Houston, multiply that by the entire state. Virtually every politician buys in. The entire congressional legislation of all the congressmen in Massachusetts, all the major mayors, they all buy into this the same way the mayor of Houston does. But the way the laws have changed in state and local government are very frightening. Marriage licenses no longer list husband and wife. It's now Party A and Party B. Birth certificates are changed. Birth certificates to have two fathers or two mothers. Adoption. Not only is gay adoption legal, but it is preferred. The state adoption agencies prefer homosexual adoptions over regular adoptions, and they harass. In fact, the Catholic Charities was forced to stop having adoptions because they would have been forced to do homosexual adoptions against their religious convictions.
Now, can you see, folks, how when the homosexuals and the perverts and the ungodly take power, they go right at the heart of what's right and what's wrong, and they deny our religious freedoms to say what they're doing is wrong. We've turned the whole thing topsy-turvy. They, in Massachusetts, preferentially allow homosexuals to adopt children over normal, Bible-believing, Christian, Catholic people who are godly and who want to have a good family. They are harassed because they don't believe in same-sex marriage, and therefore they are not allowed to have kids. Isn't that incredible? Is that what you want for Texas? If you want that for Texas, then hang up the phone and just cover your eyes, cover your ears, and see no evil, do no evil. Just leave everything alone. But if you're willing to fight with me and with the others on the line and with hundreds and thousands of pastors in the state and with thousands and tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Christians who are saying enough is enough, we're not going to allow this to happen in Texas, then I want you to go right now to press 7 on your phone. Press 7 on the phone and then sign the defense of the Texas Marriage Amendment. And then, listen, I'm Dr. Steve Hotze, President of Conservative Republicans of Texas, and I'm going to tell you we're going to fight this thing. We have a battle plan to defeat. By getting the petition signed and spreading the petitions across all the churches, we're going to activate and mobilize Christian conservatives to vote in massive numbers, in record numbers, and we're going to defeat Battleground Texas, and we're going to elect godly Christian individuals to office who support biblical marriage, who support the sanctity of life, who are socially conservative, biblical conservative, and they're going to impress their views in government. Somebody's going to make the laws. Somebody's going to develop the code of conduct. They say, well, you can't legislate morality. That's Halberdash. All of law legislates morality. If you look up the definition of law, it is the enactment of a code of conduct. A code of conduct is morality. That's what morality is, a code of conduct. The question is, whose morality is going to be enacted in Texas? Is it going to be the homosexuals and the liberals and the pro-death and pro-abortionists, or is it going to be the Christians? Whose morality? Historically, it's been the Christians. That was our nation was founded on. But now, what do we have? We have had the Christians sit back, fall asleep at the wheel. The pastors don't have the courage to take a stand, with the exception of some, like Ed Young here in Houston and Pastor Jeffries in First Baptist in Dallas, Ed Young for Second Baptist in Houston, Greg Motti, First Baptist in Houston. We've had Steve Riggle over at Grace Community Church, big church in Lawrence White, and hundreds of pastors in the Houston area have taken a stand, and hundreds across the state. Rick Scarborough has led a strong stand across the state of Texas. Dave Welch has led a strong stand with pastors. That's what we need. So I need you to press 7 on your phone right now and sign the Texas marriage petition, and please make an investment in our campaign. to keep Texas and biblical marriage safe in Texas. Now, what has happened in public health in Massachusetts, Brian?
Well, public health is, oh man, it's a terrible situation. The commissioner of public health, who was married to another man until he got fired for other problems, would go to youth events and talk about how great it was to be gay. We have a video of him doing that with, middle school and high school kids. Basically the whole problem of AIDS and everything else is being sort of swept under the carpet because gay behavior has to be considered good and legal and everything else, and it's caused a lot of problems with the gay health issues. Virtually every gay event in Massachusetts, they're handing out issues of health and disease things and all other kinds of stuff because it's getting worse in Massachusetts. The state budget in Massachusetts now has to cover gay domestic violence, all kinds of issues regarding gay health and gay mental health that it never had to cover in the past.
Is this what you want is this, folks, what you want to happen in Texas? Now listen, Brian Kamker's got a book, and the book is what same-sex marriage has done it for Massachusetts. And you're going to have a copy of that book. You stay on. At the end of the program, I'm going to tell you how you can get a free copy of that book, and that's going to be so critical. Well, I tell you, this is almost more than our audience is willing to hear. Most people go like, I don't want to hear anymore. It's so negative. But folks, you've got to step up and realize that we are in the ditch right now. We got alligators coming out of the pond, and we're in the ditch. And we got to kill them one at a time. These alligators that are coming out, these issues that are coming out, we got to stop them one at a time and defeat these the radical, liberal left, the pro-homosexuals, the pro-death, pro-abortionists. We've got to stop them. Let me tell you what happened in the legislature last session, in the special session. The enemy came when they were trying to pass a pro-life bill, and they chanted, "Hail Satan! Hail Satan!" Now, if somebody chants "Hail Satan," and they did this in the capital of the state of Texas, who do you think they worship, and who do you think they follow? God Almighty and His Son Jesus Christ? Or when they say "Hail Satan," do you think they're satanic followers? I would say they're satanic followers, and that's what we're up against. Folks, this is a spiritual battle. Go to Ephesians chapter 6. Where it talks about putting on the full armor of God, because we are waging a war against the world forces of darkness, which are in the heavenly places. We need to pray. We need to put on the full armor of God, and we need to take the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. And the only way you can fight these folks is with God's holy Word. Don't be embarrassed about using it. It's the strongest weapon that you have to defeat them. Well, let me ask this question of both Brian, both of you, and of Jared Woodfield. Why does the homosexual community want public approval and acceptance for its deviant behavior?
Well, I think that they understand, in their own heads, that people will never approve it. They know internally that they're broken people and that it's a destructive behavior, and they're obsessed with overcoming that. They're obsessed with forcing people to believe that it's good and to accept them. They know that it won't happen just on its own. That's been my observation. I'd be interested to see what Jared has to say.
Well, I think one of the big issues is that they do not respect our beliefs. They don't respect the fact that we believe that marriage is a relationship between one man and one woman. And in fact, here in Texas, in Houston, Texas now, due to an ordinance that our mayor has put in place, if a baker chooses not to cater a same-sex marriage and turns that particular couple down, then that person can be prosecuted. If a photographer says that I don't want to photograph this particular event because it violates my religious beliefs, then that person can also be prosecuted. So what they want to do is criminalize our faith. And ultimately, unfortunately, a lot of people sit on their hands. They sit down and shut up, and that's what the left wants us to do. They're afraid when people stand up and speak up that they will have the rally cry and the mobilization of folks like we have tonight on this call, and the thousands and thousands who will sign the petition to support the Texas Marriage Amendment. So it's so important that people stand up, they speak up, they refuse to give up, and if we let our voices be heard, we are the majority, but people are afraid that if they stand, they'll stand alone. And so that's why this call, I think, is so important tonight. It's so important that we continue to do what Brian is doing, exposing what's happening in states that have adopted same-sex marriage, and that we go to the courts in every step of the way when they challenge marriage amendments or they try to put your faith on trial, that we as lawyers, we as citizens stand up for the folks who are under persecution.
Well, if you want your voice to be heard, all you have to do is press 7 on your phone and sign the defense of the Texas Marriage Amendment petition. I don't want you just to do that. I want you to give and make an investment in our campaign for Texas families. And I want you to get a copy of the petition from Conservative Republicans of Texas. You can go to our PAC, CRTPAC. That's C as in cat, R-T as in Tom, P as in Paul, A-C. Conservative Republican of Texas Political Action Committee, CRT PAC. You can go there and you can download the petition, you can print it, you can pass it out to your friends, and you can get it back to us. And you can tell your friends to go online and sign. That's really critical that you do that. And you can tell your friends about this event that you've been to. Tell them about it tomorrow when you go to church. Hey, Jared, let me ask you this. What kind of opposition have you received in the press or in the media because of your positions and from other politicians?
Well, when you stand for marriage or you stand against the homosexual agenda, unfortunately, the politicians flee. The last thing they want to do, most of them, unfortunately, and on both sides of the aisle you see this, is stand up for traditional marriage and to stand against the liberal left on some of these issues that really are very divisive on the other side. We know when the newspapers and the television stations are not going to give us a fair shake. In fact, when we took the mayor on recently on what we call our Sexual Predator Protection Act, where she says that businesses must allow people who are gender confused to go into the bathroom that they feel they most closely associate with, meaning that a man can now go into a female bathroom and a female locker room. When we took that on and sued the mayor and the city council for passing that ordinance or preventing it from going on the ballot, the headlines read, "Foes of equal rights." So every step of the way, we were the ones taking on the people who were for equal rights, when in actuality, we were standing for the rights of traditional Texans, Bible-believing, God-fearing Texans who believe that marriage is the relationship between one man and one woman. We were standing with the 76% of all Texans who in 2005 passed the marriage amendment. So you will be attacked. You will be attacked when you stand against the liberal pro-homosexual left, and that's why so many people don't stand. But I believe that if 1, 2, 3, 5 of us and stand, that more will join, because one man, one woman with courage will result in a majority.
Well, that's so critical, and you've done that. You and Brian have been really examples to me and to thousands of others, because you've been willing to take the stand against the radical homosexual movement. You know, when I think about this push to promote sodomy, and folks, let's be honest, homosexuality, what is it? It's sodomy. That's what they promote, and they want to have minority status based on the practice that they participate in a sinful act. Nobody should have minority status based on any behavior, whether it's sinful or whether it's the way you part your hair or the way you walk or what you like to eat. Minority status cannot be based on somebody's behavior, whether it's right or wrong. Particularly, it can't be if it's wrong behavior, but that's what they want. So I say, when I hear about this push, I say, are we still living in America? One universal idea and core value of our nation has always been that everyone is free to believe what he wants to and speak their mind freely without being fearing being ostracized or intimidated, much less being sued by political opponents. However, this is what's happening, and this is what Jared talked about. The central idea of an open and tolerant community in America is under attack by the followers of the liberal agenda and the pro-homosexuals. You can say what you want to say as long as you agree with them. If you don't agree with the left, if you don't agree with the homosexuals, They'll insult you. They'll call you your names. They'll call you a homophobe. They'll make you be out to a bad person. Does anyone believe, did you ever think that this would be what happens to Christians in America when our nation was founded as we were based upon a Christian heritage and on a biblical basis? Give me a break. You know, we watch the media today, art, music, theater, the radio, books. It's everywhere. They're promoting homosexuality everywhere. I won't watch TV. I just don't turn it on. It's obvious that the left has adopted this propaganda machine to intimidate Christians and to win the battle over the hearts and minds of America. So I want to recap our battle plan. Our battle plan is for you to sign the petition. Go right now and hit 7. Sign the petition, Defense of the Texas Marriage Amendment. Make a contribution, an investment in our campaign. Tell your friends about it. Be a church leader and activate and mobilize your fellow Christians in church to get out and vote. Enough's enough. Texas is the last stand for Christian values in conservatism in America. Now, for staying on for staying on this phone call, I told you how you could get a free copy of a very important book. Go to www.massresistance.org. That's www.massresistance.org. On the home page, on the right-hand side, and that's Mass Resistance, MassResistance.org. On the home page, on the right-hand side, click on the title, What Same-Sex Marriage Has Done to Massachusetts, and download a PDF copy of this book. It's imperative for every Christian in Texas to read Brian Kamaker's firsthand testimony of what has happened in Massachusetts since homosexual marriage was made legal there. Now, look, he's also got a documentary by the same title that you can take a look at and download, and I would encourage you to download that. It's 28 minutes. Show that in your church. Show that in your neighborhood. Show that to your friends. It's crucial that you understand what is at stake with this issue. Now, let me warn you, some of the facts that he shares are very disturbing. I showed this at the state Republican convention to over 1,000 Republican delegates, and they gasped when they saw what had happened. Gasped numerous times. But the truth's the truth, and it's time we learn all the facts about homosexuality and how destructive to society it can be in a very short period of time. So go right now to www.massresistance.org and download a free copy. I just want to thank you, Brian, for your work and for what you've done, and I want to thank you, Jared, for what you've done. It's kind of like Winston Churchill proclaimed to the citizens of England when the Nazi air bombardment came over London. He said, and I think you'll agree with me, we will never give up, never, never, never. I want to thank you, our listeners, for joining in this historic town hall meeting. If you felt informed and want your family and friends and co-workers and church family members to participate in another town hall meeting, grab a pencil right now and write down the number. Our next one is going to be Wednesday night, the 10th of September at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And here's the toll-free number, 855-698-2853. That's 1-855-698-2853. If you've not yet signed a petition or made that very important investment in our campaign, then I ask you to press 7 now. Or you could also press 1 and then pound now. I can't stress enough how important it is that for you to take a stand with us. Take your stand. Stand with me. Stand with Brian. Stand with Jared. Stand with Pastor Ed Young. Stand with Pastor Riggle. Stand with Pastor Jeffers. Stand with Pastor White. Take a stand. Stand for marriage. Stand for Texas. Commit yourself as a church leader. Commit yourself to take a stand and organize your church. All that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing, and I know you're on the phone still because you want to do something. Ultimately, we must fight for our right to advocate biblical principles because they are the foundation of our constitutional liberties. Please contact your family members and friends and fellow church members and have them sign the Defense of Texas Marriage Amendment. You can go to crtpac.com. With God's help, I believe, and through our diligent efforts, I am confident we shall succeed. This is Dr. Hotze praying that Christ our King will lead us to victory, and may God bless you, and may God bless Texas. Thank you.